Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and I'm back with another section of Chapter 4.1 on water. And this section is on dams and reservoirs from Section 418. So, our objectives are to evaluate ways that flooding can be prevented, indicate advantages of using dams and hydroelectric power, and explain disadvantages of using dams and hydroelectric power. So the first structure I want to talk about is a levee. This is a structure built to prevent a river from overflowing. And right here is a levee. It's basically a wall of some kind used to hold back water. And you will find these along rivers. You will also find levees in the oceans. The city of New Orleans is surrounded by levees because otherwise, the city would be flooded pretty much at all times because the city is actually below sea level. So, levees are an important thing. They're just mounds of land that are built up to help prevent flooding. Also, another thing that we're going to talk about in this section is hydroelectric power. This is the electricity produced from the power of moving water. And what they use for this is they use a dam. So, a dam can be both used for flood prevention and it can also be used for hydroelectric power, which is a very clean type of energy. And dams, a lot of times, also form reservoirs. These are a natural or artificial lake used to store and regulate water. So these are also used for flood prevention. And you see a dam right here that has a reservoir behind it that is holding back some water. That would be for flood prevention. And also, a lot of times, these dams will also provide hydroelectric power. In fact, near us in our area, you have probably been to the Kinzu Dam. If not, you should visit it. And that is such a dam. It was originally built to prevent flooding in Pittsburgh. And so there is the Allegheny Reservoir in our area, which they control the level of water from that. So sometimes it's very high if Pittsburgh does not need the water, and sometimes it's very low if Pittsburgh needs more water. And also, that dam does produce electricity. So, an interesting thing around here, and there is a lot of, at the time when that dam was built, there was a lot of controversy. A lot of it had to do with the fact of eminent domain, where they went in and they did compensate people for their land, but they gave them no choice. And they bought up all their land, giving them no choice, and just took it. And so now there are villages that are in the reservoir. There are roads. They did move the houses. They tore them down. They burned them and different things so that they weren't just still in the reservoir. But there are villages that disappeared. Another issue with the Allegheny Reservoir produced by the Kinzu Dam was that it flooded native lands on the Seneca Nation, and those were lands that were promised to them and that they are sovereign over. And so that also caused a lot of controversy because that involved treaties that had been made. So, really, when dams are put in, it can cause a lot of controversy because of lands that are flooded. So, some of the pros of dams. They can prevent flooding, such as our Kinzu Dam does for Pittsburgh, and they can also provide hydroelectric power, a renewable resource that does not produce air pollution and is economical, and this is Hoover Dam out west. And the cons of dams, there are tend to be more cons than pros here. They can change the ecosystem. Areas become flooded, it definitely changes the dynamics. They tend to trap debris that can clog reservoirs. It slows down the water. Also, behind the dam, there tends to be a lot of sediment that settles out that may have to be removed. Water pollution and heavy metals can build up in the sediments and reservoir water, so just the potential for more pollution. They prevent riverbeds and banks downstream from receiving sediments, so they erode. They kill fish or prevent them from reaching spawning habitats. This is especially out west in Alaska, in those areas where there are salmon. They swim upstream to spawn, and it prevents them from doing that. So that is very controversial. It lowers the temperature of warm rivers by drawing from deep reservoir water, and certain fish cannot survive in lower temperatures. It can also raise the temperature of cold rivers by trapping the water in shallow reservoirs where the energy from the sun is absorbed. And also, God made certain fish to be able to live in certain temperatures, so it can really affect the fish in an area and the other wildlife. And fish and other creatures cannot always adapt to temperature fluctuations, so these changes may lead to lower population numbers. So, our objectives today were to evaluate ways that flooding can be prevented, indicate advantages of using dams and hydroelectric power, and to explain disadvantages of using dams and hydroelectric power. So, if you are still listening to this, I'm glad because I have special instructions for you. I want you to draw a smiley space or a smiley face, excuse me, on the space for your name for this section. If you do, that indicates that you have watched this video, and if you don't, you're going to have some points taken off. So don't forget your 5 questions, and I will be back with one more section about water.